I know I still have to shed some light on vocalism. How do I know? A little bird told me.
Fabio, I didn't understand shit about vowels. Please explain more.
Please help me. I will describe the vowels of Germanic as they seem to have been according to the main theories. Because we didn't mention all the sounds and we didn't explain how their places of articulation are distributed in the mouth. So, are you ready? Let's start! We all know that languages develop. Some sounds disappear, some other sounds are created, other sounds just change some of their features. For example, people start pronouncing them by slightly changing the position of lips, tongue, or palate. Boo! Do such changes take place randomly? Never! Nothing happens by chance. Everything in this universe has a trigger behind. But let's not talk about my determinism for today. When I decide to start a new channel about philosophy, I will have time for this as well. A lot of mechanisms can be the reason behind the formation or the elimination of sounds. One can be the simple economy principle. If we can produce a sound using less energy, thus removing some of its features, without fear to be misunderstood, the communication is not threatened and we can save energies that we can use for other things. Assimilation is another one. A sound can influence another nearby sound by drawing it to its place of articulation or lending it some features. Or you can have the influence of another language the speakers came in contact with, and so on. Another reason is the constant search for balance in the phonetic system of all languages. When we think about the sounds of a language, we have to imagine them distributed in a chart according to their place and manner of articulation. So, for example, if you take my native language, Italian, you will find an astonishing balance. We have a closed vowel in the front, I, and a closed vowel in the back, U. If we move the tongue away from the palate by a few millimeters, we will have E in the front and O in the back. We can lower the tongue a little bit more and we will have E and O. Italian only has one open vowel. If it were in the front or in the back, the system would lose its balance. That's why it's in the middle. A, an open central vowel. I proposed Italian for this example because this language has a strong balance in the vocalic system, which can help us understand the universal tendency that languages have to try to find a balance in the vowel diagram that is as stable as possible. If you think about it, we can say the Indo-European vocalic system was most probably extremely balanced, with 2 front vowels and 2 back vowels, an open central vowel and a mid-central vowel serving as a pivot for the whole system. Obviously, we say this with all reservations, both because, as you know, the Indo-European vowel system is just a hypothetical reconstruction, and because in fact many scholars believe it was a little more complex. But it's just to have a rough idea. Anyway, things change in Proto-Germanic. The loss of in Germanic is not a big deal, because it doesn't deprive the vowel diagram of its balance. This sound merges with a, and no trauma occurs. But as we know, there are 2 sounds we lose in Germanic. A, that is the open central vowel, which is never long, and O, the closed mid-back rounded vowel, which is never short. And this can be a huge problem for the whole system. It's like removing one of the legs of a table. That's probably for the sake of this balance that the Proto-Germanic language introduced these 2 sounds again, but from a different origin. Let's see in detail the 2 specific cases. In the Germanic consonant group NH, the nasal consonant was lost, with compensatory lengthening of the preceding vowel. This vowel was most probably nasalized in a transitory stage. For example, from the Indo-European root tank, which probably means something like to flourish, we have Germanic thijana through thijana with nasalized e. If the vowel preceding h was a, the letter became first a, then a, like in Indo-European punk, which became Germanic fajana, from which Gothic fahan, to take. So Indo-European a turns into o, but Germanic creates a new a coming from Proto-Germanic ang. We don't know how long those nasal vowels remained in Germanic, but scholars think they were retained for a pretty long time. Let's not forget that nasal vowels were already present in other phonetic environments, for example as final vowels in a lot of words, like the infinite form of verbs. Another sound originally missing from the Proto-Germanic vowel system was o, as this sound had evolved into a from Indo-European to Germanic. In this case as well, this loss needed to be offset by introducing a new short o. O can be the result of the opening of the sound u. And why should u be pronounced as more open? But of course, under the effect of metaphony, that is, under the influence of an open vowel. Technically, we cannot talk about this as a Germanic phenomenon. The presence of this change, in fact, is not registered in Gothic, like all other forms of metaphony. But still, the fact that all other languages do accept this phenomenon seems to confirm how important it was to restore the balance in the vocalic system. Another situation which is not 100% clear is how Indo-European a developed in Germanic. As we said in video number 4, we don't know. We can assume it remained unchanged in the first moment. In fact, it is still unchanged in the Gothic language. And maybe it developed later to a or a in all other languages. Or another theory is that it developed to a or a in all Germanic languages to come back to its original place of articulation later in Gothic. We don't know. But what we know is that in a certain moment all Germanic languages, maybe to restore some lost balance in the system, decided to introduce a new a sound of different origin. Usually scholars distinguish the two sounds, calling them A1 if it comes from Indo-European A, and A2 in the case of the new sound introduced by Germanic. The latter is typical of some Latin borrowings, or we also find it in the preterite forms of strong verbs belonging to the 7th class, that is, the reduplicating verbs. Or maybe we should say formerly reduplicating verbs, as traces of reduplicating roots are visible only in Gothic. Okay, so we understand that Germanic introduced a new balance in the vocalic system, while the distinction between short and long vowels was retained. But there's a difference in vowel length between Indo-European and Germanic. In Indo-European, the only opposition was between, on one hand, vowels with a duration of only one mora, which is the basic unit of length, so they can be called monomoric vowels or simply short vowels, and, on the other hand, long vowels with double length, also called bimoric vowels. A versus A. It looks like Germanic introduced trimoric vowels, probably originated by the merging of two different syllables. These sounds, though, can only be found in final position, and even though they disappeared like all final vowels in most of today's languages, in earlier stages they show a different development in comparison with bimoric vowels. Therefore, we cannot ignore them, as you can see from this scheme, whereby trimoric or overlong vowels are marked with a circumflex on the top, while bimoric or long vowels with a macron. Okay, it's enough about phonology. I think we need to talk about other topics next time. We will have a look at a couple of things that I left out in the previous videos, that is, articles and some anomalous verbs. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and to click on the bell icon. If you do, every time I upload a new video you will receive a notification, so you won't risk missing any news taking place on Let Me Teach You. That's it for the moment. See you and behave yourselves.